Mike Owens and Inside Fighting, joined today by Julius Walker, who's coming off a fight of the night effort in his UFC debut at UFC Seattle last Saturday. Julius, great to sit down and chat for the first time. How are your emotions after what must have been a roller coaster week?
Man, still just processing everything, if I'm being honest. You're definitely right. It was a roller coaster of a week. Lots of things happen, but most of them good. So overall, I'm doing pretty well.
Very stressful experience to make your UFC debut, especially on relative short notice. Were you able to enjoy the experience as a whole?
Oh, definitely. The UFC handles everything so incredibly well. It's we're so well taken care of as athletes. There's so many things that I'm used to having to worry about a little bit more on fight week that the UFC makes the process extremely easy. So I definitely enjoyed it a lot.
Who was the person who told you about the fight offer, and what was your first reaction when you got the name Alonzo Menifield in your UFC debut?
Yeah, so it would have been my manager Jason House. The originally like the thing that really made me know that there was probably a UFC fight on the table was he messaged asking if I could make weight. He was It was the Wednesday before fight week, so not 2 days before, but a weekend, 2 days before weigh-ins, and he messaged me and said, "Can you make weight next weekend?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And when I got the name Alonzo Menifield, was just excited. I was like, hey, that's a huge opportunity. He's got a number next to his name, so I was like, let's go. Send it. Send me the contract.
So once you got that contract and everything was confirmed, what was the process by which you and your team put in place to get you ready for that fight and that performance on short notice?
Man, so we had already we were already I was training for a fight. It was going to be a week later. It was going to be a
Okay.
heavyweight. And obviously it was not against the UFC caliber opponent. But we had obviously been training and preparing for a fight already. One of the first things that I immediately had to shift my focus to was making weight. I had a little over 30 pounds to cut,
Well,
with a week and a half to go. So I immediately kind of locked in on my diet. I really there's no time to not, with only 9 days to cut weight. Got to the gym as much as I could. I knew I was going to have to do quite a bit of running in order to get my weight down. So I immediately planned on probably, 4 or 5 miles a day of road work. And luckily I was able to, get the weight down in time, made weight pretty smoothly. But yeah, we pretty much immediately were like, hey, we're really going to have to cut some weight and get ready fast.
what do you make of the fight? Have you had a chance to watch it back, and if so, how do you assess your performance?
I for me, I'm really competitive, so it's hard for me to sit here and say that I'm completely satisfied. I'm definitely not fully satisfied with my performance. My gas tank didn't look as good as I think it should have. I ran out of energy. I was not very efficient with my use of my energy. I went out there and shot so many takedowns and was not continued to shoot the same shot over and over, even though it wasn't working. So there's definitely a lot of things that I can fix, but I am trying to remind myself that it was short notice, huge step up in competition, UFC debut against a ranked opponent. So I'm trying to remind myself of that and make sure that I'm at least a little bit proud of myself. But I've mainly been focused on some of the things I think I need to do to improve.
It sounds like there's quite a mix of emotions that you're feeling towards the fight. If you had to give me one, what's the key emotion that you're feeling?
I would say, man, gosh, mix of emotions is that's definitely a really good term for it.
Mm.
Um, I would say it's definitely a mixture of happiness and me being proud of my effort and disappointment. But I'm definitely very grateful. I'm grateful in the fact that I received this opportunity. It was a huge opportunity. There was a lot of eyes on me. And I'm grateful for the fact that, I'm able to get out of there. pretty much healthy.
Mm.
No real injuries that are going to keep me out of training for a very long time. So I'm definitely grateful for how it all went down.
Little bit of a technical difficulty there, but I asked you, Julius, how you thought the fight would go if you had a full camp behind you.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not the type to make any excuses. I like to think if I had had an entire camp to prepare that I wouldn't have gassed out so badly, but I'm not going to say that something would have changed the result. I think that would be taken away from my opponent's performance and the work that he did to take home that victory. And I'm not in the business of doing that.
There will have been a lot of fans who are UFC only fans who will have watched you fight for the first time last Saturday.
Hmm.
Did they get an accurate representation of your style? Obviously, taking away the fact that you never had the gas tank to fully go for as in a way in which you like. But did you give an accurate representation of what fans can expect now you're in the UFC?
I think that what fans can expect from me now that I'm in the UFC is a continual improvement over what they saw. I think that the version of me that they saw on Saturday night is the worst version of me that they'll see in the UFC. I'm still really early into my career. I'm still in the first. I turned pro less than 2 years ago, so I'm still in a really early stage of my career, and I still got a lot of developing to do. So I think UFC fans can expect to see me continually get a lot less sloppy. It was a little bit of a sloppy performance on my part in a lot of ways. And I think that UFC fans can expect to see a lot of those things get cleaned up. And, I'm hoping for UFC fans to expect to see a little bit more action as the fight goes on. We had a real good first round. I think the first round was really entertaining, and we pushed really hard. But towards the end of the first round, you saw my gas started to wear down a little bit, and then the second and third round wasn't as high paced. And I'd like UFC fans to be able to expect to see three high paced rounds with not a lot of drop off in them from me in the future.
So you're almost comfortable, it sounds like, with learning on the job and developing your skills and getting better whilst you're in the big leagues. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say, but here's the thing: I don't have much of a choice.
True.
I truly believed that this was going to be the year that I got into the UFC. I just wasn't. I didn't realize just how soon it was going to be. But I've got an opportunity that 99% of fighters on earth would kill for. So it's one of those things where I've got to make sure it doesn't go to waste. And oftentimes you only get one shot at something like this. So I think I've really got to make sure to make the most of it.
How much does that fight of the night bonus that I mentioned earlier benefit you as a young fighter who's still developing his career? We know the payouts on the regional scene maybe aren't as high, certainly not as high in the UFC. So how much does that benefit you as a guy on the come up?
Man, it's hard to even put in words. Even beyond just my fighting career, my personal life, my family, it means a lot for us. My family sacrificed a lot for me to be able to even step into this cage. My wife has put a lot of different things that she wants on the back burner, and things that she's had to wait for. So that bonus is going to go a really long way for me and my family. And it's also going to be really really beneficial for me in my next fight camp. It was the amount of money that I got paid. For a lot of people, they don't make that in a year. So it's definitely going to be able to definitely going to help me focus really heavily in on my next fight camp. Not be too worried about money. And then I think that little extra devotion to training could go a long way in the cage.
So talking about your next fight, do you have a name or a location or a date or a rough timeline of when we can see you back?
I wish I did. I really don't. But I think it's something that we're going to get discussing real soon. We're still making sure that everything's going to heal up properly and everything's all good. You know, I really am, just about injury free though. I feel like I should be returning to at least the early stages of training, starting to get back in shape, and I can start doing things like running, working on the cardio already, right?
Mm.
And I think that should come within the next week or two. So I think once we get fully back to training, I can have my manager and coaches sit down and figure all that out. You see, my head MMA coach actually got married the week before this fight, so he's been waiting to even go on his honeymoon. So we got back from Seattle, and the poor man and his wife finally got to spend some time together, and they got to go on their honeymoon. So once they get back, I'm sure we're going to get the ball rolling on when you guys can expect me back in the cage.
That sounds like real commitment from your coach. You're lucky to have him. Before
Yeah.
before I let you go, the light heavyweight title is up for grabs next Saturday night between Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. Just wanted to get your early predictions or how you see that fight going for the main event of UFC 313.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be there. It's funny, that was going to be my first time ever at a UFC event, but
Oh,
I just so happened to show up to UFC Seattle. So UFC Seattle was my first time at a UFC event. But I am going to, for this Ankalaev and Pereira fight, I'm going to predict a fourth round stoppage for Poatan. I think that he's going to be able to get it done. I think that Ankalaev definitely has a path to victory, but I think it's going to be really hard for him to enact that path of victory over 5 rounds, especially because I feel like there's some indication that he might want to stand and bang a little bit with Pereira, which I don't know if that's the best idea.
100%. Well, last question from me. Thank you so much for your time. I know it wasn't a winning effort last Saturday night, but it feels like in some ways it was for you and a big step up for you in your career. So, relatively speaking, a good start to 2025. What are the rest of your goals for the calendar year? Where would you like to be come the end of the year?
Yeah, so by the end of the year, I'd definitely like at least two more walks to the UFC octagon with two more victories. And I'd like to start setting myself up to be in position to maybe get another crack at a ranked opponent sometime in early 2026. Start making that my goal. Start climbing back in that direction. I was one judge's scorecard away for potentially having a number next to my name. So I think that I've got to go patch some holes, but I've got time to fix them. And I think I can start getting on that path to having a number next to my name by maybe early next year.
I love it. Well, Julius, thank you for your time. Congratulations on the fight. Congratulations on the bonus. And we look forward to seeing you back in action soon.
I appreciate you so much, brother.